I think it's one of the most well-crafted Shakespeare plays. It's just really tight and intense. An opportunity is presented to you and you have 30 seconds to make a decision as to whether you're going to actually play out this fantasy or whether you're not. And I think that that is the beauty of this play, and the ramifications of that decision. You're then wedded to that decision, and that spirals out of control. And I think the morality of the play is that Macbeth and Lady Macbeth step outside the boundaries of normal moral behaviour, which I think is most people's fantasy, that most people have that fantasy, even in small ways. I would love to actually misbehave very badly at this point, or say what I'm really thinking, or act upon this urge. And of course they do, and then they can't stop. And I think that's what makes it so incredibly compelling. So I think it's very timely in what the play kind of presents as to what happens when you make decisions without discussing them first with anybody. What happens when you just, go for it. And we admire that to a certain extent, but there's ramifications to that. So I think we love watching the train wreck. King Duncan comes round for dinner, and this prophecy has obviously exacerbated a thought that both Lady Macbeth and Macbeth have had. And also there's this whole aspect that they don't have a child, or if they did, the child had died, and they don't have an offspring, they don't have an heir. So they're living in the moment. This is their opportunity to seize the initiative right now. And I think that there's something that all of us understand in that. Somebody makes a decision, what's the ramification of that decision? And I think that's what makes it so exciting. It's a real kind of roller coaster of a play like that. And also the fact that Macbeth has sort of ideas above his station and believes he's capable of taking this moment. And certainly Lady Macbeth in a way is probably more capable of ruling than Macbeth even, but she has to do it through Macbeth. So there's such an interesting sort of male-female dynamic in this play. There's so much in this play about heirs and babies and giving birth and the power over childbirth and the way the witches are almost like midwives. There's some really interesting aspects to this production. So I'm intrigued by it, and I'm looking forward to returning to it. So I'm interested in the threat of the witches. I'm very keen that the witches should radiate feminine power, because a witch in the Elizabethan period was what we might call a midwife or a herbalist or somebody with knowledge. And I'm interested in that aspect of the witches, is that they have a connection, I think, to Lady Macbeth that's very, very powerful. And there's a female world behind the play that's very important, I think, to bring out. And I'm also interested in Lady Macbeth's own sort of journey into midwifery, and she hints very strongly that she's had a child and that child has died, and that Shakespeare makes it very clear that Macbeth is furious that Banquo's kids are going to become king, and furious about Macduff's children. And of course he's killed at the end of the play by a man not born of woman. So this is all over the play, and I feel like it's never bought out, and I'm interested in this sort of female-male world and how it operates together. I think we're definitely interested in the witches, and I think we're interested in I think that they're a neglected part of the play, that either they're sort of presented as Halloween witches, or they're sort of ignored to a certain extent. And I think they're way more important. I mean, Shakespeare doesn't make those Shakespeare doesn't open his play with something to be ignored. I'm interested in female power and how patriarchal societies try and suppress it, and it will find ways to usurp those patriarchal systems. And I'm interested in how they operate on the fringes of society, and I'm interested in how Shakespeare is fascinated with old, let's say British rather than English, old British pagan rituals. They're all over his plays. And I think Elizabethan England was a time when, the Catholic Church was thrown off, and then the Church of England hadn't really decided what it wanted to be yet. And there was this wonderful time for women in Elizabethan England where for about 30 years they got an enormous amount of cultural power. And, Elizabeth was on the throne and everything was in a state of flux. And Shakespeare sort of reflects both this sort of the proximity of women to high culture, but also these old kind of pagan, old English rituals. Actors can get in the way of Shakespeare. And I think if you've got an actor who's very competent with verse speaking and understands those techniques, then they can present that verse in a way that allows you as an audience member to interact with it as if you were reading it. And what I mean by that is, and this is very difficult because to a certain extent, there's many actors who approach acting as to, well, I wouldn't do that. And, you know, sometimes you have to say, well, at this moment we're not that interested in you, we're interested in this guy called Macbeth. Shakespeare gives you clues in the language about how he wants that played, in the way that he structures particularly the poetry. And I think if you have people who can do that, you can have all these shades of meaning, which is why there can be so many interpretations of a play like Macbeth, and why there's a whole industry around Shakespeare, because there is an interpretive value to that poetry. So I think our technique in Aquila has always been to make the words make sense and make them very vital and real, but not try and get in the way too much. Shakespeare's language is absolutely the best acting language ever written. He was an actor, he wrote it for actors, it was designed to be spoken and read, and it was designed to be appreciated in the moment. And I think a lot of Shakespeare plays rather unravel if you do a lit-crit approach to them. I think that so much is explained if you get caught up in the moment. And then you don't need to understand why people have had change of hearts. You don't need to understand why there's been these reversals, because you've been part of that process. So ultimately it's about a live experience. Shakespeare's language is very kinetic. The way the words sound and the way the poetry adds up, there's almost a movement to it. It will make you move in a certain way. So I think to come into it like that is the way to go. And Aquila's always done that. And I think however we approach our productions, we've always been very proud of the way that we work on language and have a sort of unified style with language and present that. The worst thing for me is that anybody would ever see one of our shows and see actors going, I'm doing Shakespeare now, you know, it's Shakespeare, watch me declaim. And that's not our thing. You know, we've been known for our concept productions in the past. If anything, we're sort of moving away from that. I think that's been done, and we're more interested in the different nuances that people can find when they watch this play as a modern audience. If an actor or a director forces a concept too much, we can lose that. Right now, this may change. My concept for it is to do it Scottish. Do it Scottish in you know, tartan and broadswords and make it very muscular. So, which is weird because that seems quite avant-garde, which is interesting. So, but I've always been attracted to it as a really great thriller. The fun of Aquila is you see those actors enjoying themselves, and you get caught up in that. And I think that's what live theatre's about at the end of the day. Our show will certainly be fast-moving and powerful, and I think disturbing. You know, I think it's a disturbing play in the right ways. You know, I think it's like watching a really great thriller that really strikes a chord with you. I think you should be on the edge of your seat watching this play.